Number 7. The Baghdad Battery. In 1936, archaeologists digging near Baghdad pulled a clay jar out of the ground that looked completely ordinary. But inside it was a copper cylinder and an iron rod purposefully positioned in the center. The jar dated to around 200 BC. Nobody thought much of it until Wilhelm Koenig, the director of the Iraq National Museum, held it up and realized it looked almost identical to a modern galvanic cell, the basic design behind every battery ever made. When scientists filled replicas with an acidic liquid like lemon juice or vinegar, the device produced between zero point 0.5 and 1.5 volts of electricity. Mythbusters was able to build a set of them, hook them in series, and hit 4 volts. Enough to electroplate metal, enough to feel a tingle, so it's proven to essentially be some sort of ancient battery that produces electricity. But we have absolutely no idea what it was used for. And it's baffling because the development of batteries doesn't really begin for another 2,000 years. It's what we would literally call alien technology of that time. That's like finding a flip phone inside an Egyptian tomb. Pretty much impossible. And yet, it's there. So what are they using it to power? Were they even aware of what they made? Number 6. The Aeolipile. Around 50 AD, a Greek engineer named Heron of Alexandria took a hollow metal sphere, attached 2 bent nozzles pointing in opposite directions, and suspended it over boiling water. Steam shot through the nozzles. The sphere started spinning. He had just built the world's first steam engine. Heron described it, noted it was an interesting novelty, and moved on. He didn't try to scale it, he didn't attach it to anything, and nobody else in the Roman world did either. For over 1700 years, the steam engine sat fully invented and completely ignored. What's crazy is that nobody looked at it and thought it was innovative or complex, which is quite unusual considering that Heron was one of the greatest experimental intellectuals of his time, and he taught at the Museum of Alexandria, which meant his students and colleagues had access to everything he wrote and built, and still, nothing happened. The steam engine that sparked the Industrial Revolution existed for over 16 centuries. The ancient world just wasn't ready to know what it had. Number 5. The Saqqara Bird. In 1898, archaeologists excavating a tomb near the Saqqara Pyramid in Egypt discovered a small wooden object that resembled a bird. It dated to around 200 BC. The speculation was that it could have been a toy or ceremonial object. Nobody thought much of it. So the object sat in the Cairo Museum for over 70 years until Khalil Messiha examined it and noticed something strange. It had no legs. The shape of the tail resembled nothing like an actual bird's tail, and it looked nothing like any other bird nor statue discovered. It looked more like an airplane. Messiha built a replica model, added a horizontal tail stabilizer, and it flew, leading to him publishing a paper arguing it was a scale model of a working glider and that Egyptians knew about ancient aviation. In 2006, aviation and aerodynamics expert Simon Sanderson built his own replica and tested it in a wind tunnel, this time without any tail at all. It generated 4 times its own weight in lift. This suggests that, theoretically, the Egyptians may have understood aerodynamics and mastered aviation principles. It's hard to believe because this simple wooden carving was the blueprint for aviation created over 2,000 years before the Wright brothers took their first flight. Number 4. Zhang Heng's Seismoscope. Around 132 AD, Chinese engineer Zhang Heng presented the Han imperial court with a large bronze vessel shaped like an urn. 8 dragon heads were mounted around the outside, each one holding a bronze ball in its mouth. Beneath each dragon sat a bronze toad with its mouth open. Zhang Heng told the court it could detect earthquakes hundreds of miles away and identify their direction. Everyone assumed he had lost his mind. Then on a perfectly still day with no perceptible shaking, one dragon released its ball. The scholars at the capital were confused. Days later, a messenger arrived with reports of a major earthquake, exactly where the dragon had pointed. The device worked through a pendulum suspended inside the sealed vessel that swung when seismic waves arrived, triggering the corresponding dragon. Zhang left no blueprints, and we still do not know the exact internal design. But here is what we do know: the next earthquake detector wasn't built until 1703. That's a 15th century gap. A single engineer in ancient China built a device so far ahead of its time that the rest of the world didn't even attempt to build something similar for over a millennium and a half. Number 3, the Viking Sunstone. Norse sagas written around the 13th century describe a mysterious stone that, when held up to the sky on a cloudy day, could reveal the exact position of the sun even when it was completely invisible. For centuries, historians assumed this was mythology. Then in 2013, a piece of Icelandic calcite crystal was pulled from a British shipwreck. Physicists took notice. Calcite is birefringent, meaning it splits light into two beams. When you rotate it toward the sky, the point where both beams reach equal brightness marks the precise location of the sun. Researcher Guy Ropars at the University of Rennes tested this and found it accurate to within 1 degree, comparable to modern navigational instruments. This is how the Vikings crossed the North Atlantic to Iceland, Greenland, and eventually the coast of North America. No magnetic compass, no GPS, no visible stars or sun, just a crystallized rock and an understanding of polarized light that European science would not formally describe for another 700 years. Aerospace engineers have since studied the same principle for developing backup navigation systems for aircraft and satellites. A navigation technique used by Norse sailors is now being applied to spacecraft. So the Vikings were unknowingly flexing a primitive technology that became a foundational blueprint for our most advanced navigation systems today. Number 2, Egyptian mummification. The ancient Egyptians spent 4,000 years refining the process of preserving a human body, and by the end, they were extraordinarily good at it. A discovery at a Saqqara embalming workshop gave scientists the clearest picture yet. Labeled ceramic jars, still containing residue from the actual process, revealed mixtures of animal fats, beeswax, plant resins sourced from Southeast Asia, and compounds from across tropical Africa. They were sourcing ingredients from across the world and combining them with a working knowledge of antibacterial chemistry 2,500 years before science formally identified bacteria. They didn't know what bacteria were, they just knew, through thousands of years of observation and refinement, exactly which substances stopped decay and which didn't. The results speak for themselves. Mummies made 3,000 years ago still contain intact DNA that modern geneticists can fully sequence. And in a 2026 study, researchers found that the molecular compounds from the original embalming recipe are still floating in the air around the remains today. You can literally smell the formula that has been slowly releasing for 3 millennia. The Egyptians built preservation technology so effective that it's still working right now, outlasting every synthetic material we have ever made. Number 1, Göbekli Tepe. In 1994, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt was surveying a hilltop in southeastern Turkey called Göbekli Tepe, which translates roughly as Potbelly Hill, when he found carved flint and fragments of worked limestone protruding from the ground. He started digging. What emerged was a complex of massive T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in circular enclosures, some of them 5.5 meters tall and weighing up to 20 metric tons, covered in detailed carved reliefs of foxes, boars, vultures, snakes, and scorpions. The site dates to approximately 9600 BC. That is 7,000 years before the Egyptian pyramids and 6,000 years before Stonehenge. The people who built it had no pottery, no metal tools, no writing, no agriculture, and no permanent settlements. According to everything we understood about how civilization develops, they should not have been capable of coordinating the quarrying, transport, and precise placement of multi-ton stone pillars at this scale. The dominant model had always held that farming came first, then surplus food, then organized society, then monuments. Göbekli Tepe reversed the sequence. Some researchers, including Schmidt himself, propose that the demands of building and maintaining a ritual site of this magnitude may have been what pushed these groups to develop agriculture in the first place. The monument may not have been built by civilization, it may have started it. Only about 5% of the site has been excavated, the rest is still underground. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to see more.